Time to build. Typically, when I start building, before I open the Power Automate, I print a signed off diagram and stick it above my monitor. So I have my eye on it all the time, and I religiously stick to every single step that we have in the diagram. And I strongly encourage you to do the same thing. The other thing is that this is not a demo anymore. Almost everything that I cover in this solution, you have seen it before. So instead of slowing down and explaining every single step on every single feature that I use, I put the lecture that covers that topic here. So if you see there is some areas that you need more explanation, get back to that lecture and watch it one more time. I'm not going to slow down because my time is limited for this delivery. So let's get back to it and see what we need to do to start with. Right after start, the diagram says request item with amount, and this request should come from Excel. Let's go to our Excel sheet and see how we can do it from there. My Excel sheet is already uploaded to Tailor Docs. If I click on it, you will see that it's just a range. It's not a table yet. So we need to convert it to a table because triggers can be connected only to a table. So I select the entire range and I click on Format as Table, and I pick the format that I like. Make sure that my table has headers. Click OK, and now we have a table. Next thing that I want to do, I want to give it a proper name. So I click on the table and I click on Design. I give it a name and I call it Inventory. All good. It's automatically saved and we're good to continue. Now I need to go to Flow Designer. I click on Create and I want to create a new flow. This is an instant flow. Remember, it's not monitoring anything. Somebody pushes a button and this flow starts. So I call it Add Item to Weekly Purchase List. And I scroll down and I pick for a selected row under Excel Online for Business. We select this trigger and I click on Create. Before doing anything, it has to be a properly designed project, not just a quick demo that shows bits and pieces. So every action and every trigger has to be properly named. So I click on this drop down and I rename it to Item Requested. Location, I need to pick up the website that is hosting the file. Power Automate Workshop. Document library that I want to use is Tailor Docs. And if I click on the file, I will find my file. Table, good that we renamed it. Now it is called Inventory. But if you really look back into the diagram, the amount should be added. Not the amount that is available in the inventory. The amount that is requested by the supervisor. So I go back here and I want to add an input field to ask the user for more information. So I click on number because the amount should be number, and I call it amount requested. And we're good to go. Still, I cannot save it because there is no action. But let's go back to the diagram and see where we are. Request item with amount is done. Now I need to check the amount. But before I go there, the very first thing that I typically do right after the trigger, I want to look into the configuration. Is there anything hard-coded in this workflow that may change in the future? Yes. If you really look at the big picture, you see we have to send a request to the manager. And this manager can change later on. And when this manager changes, we really don't want to dig into the layers of the conditions inside a workflow to update his or her email address. So if that's the case, I want to have a configuration variable to put this value inside it. Of course, I can use just one single, for example, string variable and put it there, but I'd rather do it properly and I create an object for it. I call it initialize variable and I call it initialize config. The name is going to be flow configuration Type is going to be object, and the value that I want to put here is going to be a JSON object. To do that, I need to go to the JSON viewer, and I've already typed in the variable. So it's going to be manager email, and I put my own email there. Of course, if there are more configuration items, I can add more items, but at the moment I just put it this way because in case we want to expand this flow in the future and add more and more items to this general configuration for the flow, there is only one place to take care of it. So basically, this is not a functional requirement. This is some maintainability requirement that we added here. So I copy it here, and I bring it back to the flow, and I paste it here. Just make sure before you go there, you just click on validate and make sure it's a valid JSON. Good. So now we have a variable, just like we learned before. We need to use JSON parse, and then we need to get this value, flow configuration, and I want to call it config details. And this one requires a schema, and the schema is again the same thing. I get the same sample data. I bring it here, generate from sample, and if I click on done, it creates a schema for me. Fantastic. So now I have the configuration, which is my manager email, in a visual element that I will get to it in a minute. Now, the other thing is that the amount that is requested here, this amount is not going to stay the same thing from the beginning to end. So if I go back to my diagram, you see this amount is something, but it may change to 29. Because this is not going to stay the same value from the beginning to end, I'd rather keep it in a variable, so eventually whatever that stays in that variable can be added to the item weekly purchase list. So again, after this is done, I add another step, and I call variables initialize variable, and this variable is going to be initialize order amount. I call it order amount, and the type is going to be integer. Value, I want to get the value that comes from the item requested, and that is amount requested. Fantastic. So now I got the initialize order amount. This is the time that we can actually start working. So I go back here and I go to the next step after the requested item has arrived to flow. I need to put a condition to check the amount and see if it is less than 30 or not. I click on new step and I add a condition. This condition, I call it is large order. The value that I want to examine, now it's in a variable. So I pick order amount is less than 30. You may have noticed that I exactly follow the logic that I have it in the workflow diagram. If yes, we go to the final stage. I ignore it at the moment. I will get to that in a later stage. If no, something needs to be done before we add the item. So if no, we need to send a request to manager. So let's create that approval request on the first place. So I come back here, if no, add an action. I search for approval, create an approval, and I rename it to approval request for large orders. Approval type is going to be first to respond. Of course, it's approve reject. Title is going to be new large order created, please review. Assign to, now we don't need to hard code anything because config detail is going to give it to us. Remember the email that we put here, manager email. If I come back here now, assign to, I can go to my dynamic content. And if I go to config detail, I have the manager email directly here. You see, I didn't put anything here because now if the manager email changes, I can come to the initialize config and just change it. The name initialize config tells everybody that all my configuration information is here. So when the manager changes, where have we used this email? Where else shall we go and make changes? There is no such a thing anymore. We just come here and anything that can possibly change is already here. So assigned to the manager is there. The request for, and we need to see what item has been requested. Inventory item. Come back here. For the amount of order amount is submitted. Please review and act. Okay. And that's it. There is no item link. There is nothing else there. Show advanced options. Enable notification. We want this guy to receive a notification when the request is there, but enable reassignment. There is nobody else for this guy to assign it to. So I just take it out. So far, we created the request while we need to send it to the manager and wait for his or her approval. So I come back here and I say, add an action, and that's going to be wait for approval. Wait for an approval. Okay, rename. Wait for manager approval. And the approval ID is coming from the approval request for large order, approval requests for large orders, and I need to provide the approval ID. And that's it. So let me go back to my diagram. We are done with send to manager. Now, again, there is another condition. If manager approves or not approves. If approves, we don't need to do anything. But if he doesn't approve, we need to reduce the amount to 29. So let's go back here right away. After we get the response from this guy, add an action. I need to put a condition here. There we go. And the condition is, did manager approve? The value that we want to check now is going to be the wait for manager approval. And we are looking for outcome is equal to or contains approve. If yes, we just add the item. If no, we need to do something. So we go back here. If yes, we just leave it blank. If no, we add an action. And this time we need to reduce the amount to 29. So set variable and I rename it to reduce order amount. The name is going to be the order amount. We need to set it to 29. Great. We're pretty much done with everything that we were supposed to do. Let's see. We'll receive the request. If it's a large order, if yes, we don't do anything. If no, we send it to the manager for approval. And if his approval says no, we just set the order amount to 29. All done. We need to go to the last step, which is add item to the weekly purchase. And that weekly purchase is here. Weekly purchase list. Inside SharePoint, so we go back to the flow, and now we need to add one step here at the very end, which is going to be SharePoint. Under SharePoint, we look for create item, and site address is going to be the same address, Power Automate Workshop. List name is going to be weekly purchase. Title is going to be the inventory item. So I scroll down to the inventory item. The amount is the order amount. We don't get the amount requested because we are changing this amount in case the manager does not approve. And the status value is going to be pending because this workflow does not send it to the logistics. We are done. Let me just save it. And it's time to test. I go back to SharePoint to this file and see if we can run it. So if I click on it, we open the file. But remember, you cannot run it from SharePoint Online. You see, there is no flow here. So what do we need to do? Two things. One way is I can click on it and I can say open in the app, which basically you need to instruct users to go there and open it inside Excel. But typically you don't do that. Typically users want to click on it and it does the job. So I can click on this drop down and I can change the library setting. And if I go to advanced setting inside SharePoint, I can scroll down, opening documents in browser. I can say open in client application, always for this library. Again, I scroll down and I click on OK. So now, if I go to Tailor Docs, so now if I click on this, it opens it directly in Excel. Great. It says it is read-only. It doesn't matter because I'm not making any changes here. I need to go to Data and run the flow for this. First, I need to click on the item that I want to add it to the order list. I click on Flow because it's the first time that I'm opening it. For this flow, it asks me for sign in. I click on sign in, and now the flow is loaded. Imagine I want to order suspender elastic. I click on the Run button. It checks the connectivities. I click on Continue. Now it's asking for the amount. How many do you want to order? First, Happy Pat, 12. Run flow, done. Is it complete? Let's go and check. Weekly purchase, and the item is already added. Fantastic. Small order goes through. Let's go for something else. This time I go for knitted elastic. I go for big order. And this time I go for example, 45. And I click on Run Flow. Done. Now, it should send me an email. At the same time, it should send me the notification inside Flow UI. So if I go back to my Power Automate and I click on Home, Leave, you see that there is a request here for approval because I am the approving manager. And if I click on Approve, it brings me to this UI and I can read the details. The request for knitted elastic for amount of 45. Shall I say approve or reject? Yeah, let me just approve it and put a comment here. Looks good. And I click on Confirm. Response successfully recorded. Let me go back to Power Automate and see. Knitted elastic, amount of 45. Great, it's done. Let's try another one this time with the big order that manager does not approve. So for example, hollow rivets, run, and I put the amount of, for example, 50, and I click on Run Flow. Done. Good. Let me go back to my flow again and see if I get any request for approval again. Again, it's here. This time I click on reject. It doesn't really matter on what you click. It gives you the chance to update it. I can say, nope, too much. And I click on confirm. This time I rejected that. Done. And if I go back to Power Automate, you should see this item again, which is hollow rivets, but the amount is set to 29. Great. We are done with the first phase of the workflow. Now we need to create a second workflow that picks up these pending items and sends it to the email that we already decided on, which I will do it in the next lecture because Udemy has a size limit for the files.